In 1953, your grandmother kept a small brown bottle in the medicine chest and a handful of simple things in the kitchen cabinet that she reached for whenever pain came knocking. She never called any of it alternative medicine. To her, it was just medicine. It was what her own mother had handed down to her, and what she fully intended to hand down to you. But somewhere along the way, over the decades that followed, a great many Americans were quietly taught that anything from the pantry or the garden was backward, unscientific, something only people without options would ever use. But here is what almost nobody stopped to tell you. Many of those humble remedies worked, and modern science has since gone back, studied them, and confirmed exactly why. In case after case, a plant or a mineral your grandmother kept in her kitchen was later studied, refined, repackaged, and sold back to us in a bottle at 10, 20, sometimes 50 times the original cost. The remedy didn't change. The mechanism didn't change. What changed was the label on the box and who collected the payment at the register. Today, we're going to count down some of the most remarkable of those old natural remedies, going from number 10 all the way down to number 1, and along the way, I'll show you not only what your grandmother did, but what the science actually says about why it worked. These are simple, natural things, most of which are probably sitting in your kitchen or your local grocery store right now, waiting for you. And stay with me until the very end, because the number 1 on this list is the one they could never bottle, never patent, and never sell. And it may be the most powerful of them all. But before we begin, do me one small kindness that helps me a great deal. Hit that subscribe button, because what you're about to hear is documented history that far too few people remember anymore. Leave a like as well, because that's how this old, honest knowledge reaches more people who need it. And tell me down in the comments what city and state you're watching from, how old you are, and which of these remedies your own family used, because I genuinely want to know if your grandmother kept that small brown bottle too. Deal? Then let's begin the countdown. Let's start at number 10, the salt gargle. When her throat was sore, or a mouth sore made swallowing feel like broken glass, your grandmother didn't rush off to the pharmacy. She walked to the kitchen, dissolved about half a teaspoon of ordinary table salt into a glass of warm water, and gargled with it for 30 seconds or so. It was that simple, and it cost a tiny fraction of a penny. She never needed a study to prove it worked, because she could feel it working, right there, that same evening. And here is the beautiful part. Modern science has explained exactly why it works, and it comes down to a simple principle called osmosis. That warm saltwater solution gently draws excess fluid out of the swollen, inflamed tissue in your throat, and less swelling means less of the pressure that's driving the pain. On top of that, the salty environment makes it harder for the bacteria that worsen a throat infection to thrive. Two real effects from one of the cheapest ingredients on earth. What's remarkable is that this isn't some forgotten piece of folklore that science has left behind. Major, respected medical institutions still recommend this exact same method today, in nearly the same words your grandmother would have used. A warm saltwater gargle remains one of the first things recommended for a simple sore throat, all these years later. It never stopped being good advice. It simply stopped being profitable advice, because nobody on earth can patent salt. Think about that for a moment, because it's the quiet thread that runs through this entire list. Over the years, mouthwashes and throat sprays were marketed heavily as the modern scientific answer. And somewhere in all that advertising, plain salt water came to seem like something only people without better options would use. But the salt water never got worse. The marketing just got louder. A bottle of branded rinse cost real money. The salt in your cupboard cost almost nothing, and did much of the same gentle work. So the next time a scratchy, sore throat sneaks up on you, before anything else, remember the glass of warm salt water. It's gentle, it's nearly free, and it's stood the test of 100 years and more. Of course, if a sore throat is severe, lasts more than a few days, or comes with a high fever, that's the moment to see a professional. And we'll come back to that important point at the end. But for the ordinary scratchy throat, your grandmother's kitchen already had the answer. And that same kitchen holds our next remedy, one she reached for every single morning. At number 9 is the apple cider vinegar tonic. For the joint stiffness and the grinding aches that made getting out of bed each morning feel like a small penance, your grandmother had a simple ritual. 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar stirred into a glass of warm water, often with a spoonful of honey to soften the sharpness. She drank it down first thing, before the day had even properly begun, the way some people drink their morning coffee. It was cheap, it was easy, and it was as much a part of her morning as opening the curtains. This wasn't some obscure secret either. Back in 1958, a physician up in Vermont documented this very practice in a book on folk medicine, and that book became a genuine bestseller. But here's the fascinating thing. It didn't become popular because it introduced something brand new. It became popular precisely because it described what millions of American households were already quietly doing in their own kitchens every morning. He was simply writing down the wisdom that was already there, all around him. As for why it may help, scientists have proposed a few gentle mechanisms. The acetic acid in the vinegar may play a role in how the body handles certain compounds that accumulate in stiff, aching joints, and there's been discussion about its mild balancing effect on the body as a possible reason people feel less inflammatory discomfort. Now, I'll be honest with you. The research here is still developing, and it's not the final word. But your grandmother never needed the mechanism spelled out on paper. She judged it the way she judged everything, by how she felt. And the cost tells the same story we keep coming back to. A whole quart of apple cider vinegar back in 1953 cost around 25 cents. Today, a bottle of the nice name brand, raw, with the mother, apple cider vinegar can run $8, $9, $10 or more, marketed as a wellness product with a beautiful label. It's the identical humble vinegar at its heart. What multiplied was the packaging and the marketing budget, not the vinegar itself. Nobody could patent it, so for a long time nobody bothered to call it medicine. If you'd like to try it, gentleness is the whole key. A single tablespoon well diluted in a full glass of water, never straight, because undiluted vinegar is hard on tooth enamel and on the stomach. Many people like it with a little honey and warm water as a soothing morning drink. And if you have any stomach condition or you take medication, just run it by your doctor first, which again is exactly the kind of care we'll talk more about at the end. So that's the morning tonic. But what did she do at the other end of the day, when her feet and her whole body were worn out? That brings us to number 8. At number 8 is the warm foot bath. After a long day on her feet, or on the evenings when a headache sat behind her eyes and pulsed with every heartbeat, your grandmother would fill a basin or a big pot with water as warm as she could comfortably stand, and simply soak her feet in it for 15 or 20 quiet minutes. Sometimes she'd add a handful of Epsom salts, sometimes just plain warm water. It was one of the most ordinary rituals in the house, and one of the most soothing. And there's real science tucked inside that simple basin of warm water. The heat causes the blood vessels in your feet and legs to gently widen and open up, which draws blood downward, away from other parts of the body. For that pounding kind of headache, this gentle downward pull can help ease some of the pressure that's driving the pain up in the head. It's a beautifully simple idea. You treat the problem at the top by warming things up at the very bottom. But the foot bath was never only about the mechanics of blood flow. There's something deeply calming about warm water on tired feet at the end of a hard day, and that calm is itself a form of medicine. The warmth helps switch the body into its rest and recover mode, easing the tension and the stress that so often amplify every ache we feel. Your grandmother may not have used the words nervous system, but she understood, in her bones, that a person who is calm and warm simply hurts a little less. And notice once again how this quiet ritual slowly gave way to things you buy on a shelf. Over the decades, heating pads with brand names and warranties, and pills promising fast relief gradually took the place of the humble evening foot soak. The foot bath didn't disappear because it stopped working. It disappeared because a device or a tablet was simply more convenient to sell and easier to advertise on television. But the warm water still works exactly as well as it ever did. The lovely thing about this one is that there is almost nothing to get wrong. Warm, comfortable water, never scalding hot, a basin big enough for your feet, and a quiet 15 minutes to yourself. If you have diabetes or any loss of feeling in your feet, you'll want to be extra careful about the water temperature, or check with your doctor first, since it can be hard to judge the heat safely. But for most people, it's simply one of the gentlest, most restful things you can do for yourself. And when your grandmother wanted to reach for something even older, for pain itself, she reached for a bark that would one day change the whole world of medicine. At number 7 is white willow bark tea. On the mornings when a headache had settled in, or when muscle aches made every movement feel like a chore, your grandmother would steep dried willow bark in boiling water and drink it down as a tea. It was a remedy so old it stretches back thousands of years, used by healers across the ancient world, passed quietly from one generation to the next until it reached her kitchen. A small handful of the dried bark cost mere pennies. And here is where the story becomes genuinely astonishing, because this one isn't merely similar to a famous medicine. It is, quite literally, where that medicine came from. Willow bark contains a natural compound called salicin, and once it's inside your body, salicin converts into salicylic acid. If that sounds familiar, it should. Back in the late 1800s, a chemist studied that very compound, synthesized a stable version of it in a laboratory, filed a patent, and gave the world the little white tablet we now call aspirin. The tablet was the child, the bark was the parent. So for the next half-century, an entire nation was gently taught that the tablet was modern science, and the bark was a relic of poverty. And there's a certain irony in it because some studies suggest that the other natural compounds that ride along inside willow bark, its flavonoids and polyphenols, may make it a little gentler on the stomach than plain synthetic aspirin, while still offering meaningful relief. The refined tablet was a triumph of chemistry, no doubt, but the humble bark it came from was never the fraud it was made out to be. And the price told the same familiar tale we keep circling back to. A handful of dried willow bark cost pennies. A bottle of the branded aspirin, when it arrived, was sold as progress and priced accordingly. One was framed as science, the other as the past, even though they shared the very same active heart. It's perhaps the clearest example on this entire list of a kitchen remedy being lifted, refined, patented, and sold back to the very people who'd known it all along. Now, I do want to be careful and honest with you here, because willow bark is powerful precisely because it's so closely related to aspirin. That means it isn't for everyone. Anyone who can't take aspirin, children, people on blood thinners, anyone with certain stomach conditions, should steer clear of it and talk to a doctor first. This is a perfect example of why the disclaimer at the end of this video truly matters. But it remains one of the most remarkable pieces of this whole story. The world's most famous painkiller began its life as a humble tea. And from a bark that fights pain, we move to a mineral bath that has soothed tired bodies for generations. At number 6 is the Epsom salt soak. After a long week of physical labor, after the deep aches of a hard winter settled into the joints, after the kind of tiredness that lives in the whole body, the standard evening remedy in millions of American homes was beautifully simple. 2 cups of Epsom salts dissolved into a hot bath, and 20 unhurried minutes of soaking in it. Generations of women in particular knew this ritual by heart and swore by the relief it brought. Part of the magic here is something we've already touched on, and it's worth repeating because it's so real: the hot water itself. A warm soak widens the blood vessels, eases muscle tension, and gently shifts the body into that calm, restful state where pain simply registers less sharply. The heat lowers the stress chemistry that amplifies every ache, which is a big part of why you climb out of a hot bath feeling looser, lighter, and more at peace than when you climbed in. Now, whether the magnesium in Epsom salt actually soaks through the skin in meaningful amounts is something scientists still debate honestly, and I won't overstate it to you. But here's what is not in dispute. The remedy brought real comfort, and generation after generation of people knew from direct experience that it helped. Sometimes the science is still catching up to what the body has known for a very long time, and a warm bath with a couple of cups of Epsom salts remains one of the most harmless, restful things a tired person can do. And you can guess how this story went. Over the years, prescription muscle relaxants gradually took over as the modern answer to muscle aches, arriving with official names and prescription pads. A 5-pound box of Epsom salts back in 1953 cost about a quarter. A course of prescription pills today can cost a great deal more and comes with a list of side effects the bath never had. Your grandmother never needed anyone's permission or anyone's prescription to simply draw herself a warm bath at the end of a hard day. If you'd like to bring this one back, it couldn't be easier. A warm bath, a couple of cups of Epsom salts from any grocery store, and 20 quiet minutes to let the day melt off of you. As with any hot bath, ease in gently. Keep the water comfortable rather than scalding. And if you have heart trouble, low blood pressure, or any condition affected by heat, check with your doctor about what's safe for you. But for most people, it's pure, simple, old-fashioned comfort. And from the bath, we step back into the kitchen, to a knob of fresh root that your grandmother treated as one of her most trusted medicines. At number 5 is ginger tea. For the cramping pains that could bend a woman double, for the arthritic joints that ached worse every winter, and for the queasy nausea that so often rides along with a bad headache, the answer in many households was a simple pot of fresh ginger root, boiled in water, sweetened with a little honey, and sipped slowly and warm. It was treated as real medicine, even though nobody in the kitchen felt the need to call it that. A knob of fresh ginger cost just a few cents, and modern research has been genuinely kind to ginger. The natural compounds inside it, with names like gingerols and shogaols, act on some of the very same inflammatory pathways in the body that common over-the-counter pain relievers target. In fact, one study of around 150 women found ginger to be comparable to a standard over-the-counter medication for easing menstrual cramp pain. That's not folklore. That's a spice from the pantry standing shoulder to shoulder with a pharmacy product in a real trial. Think about what that means for a moment. For centuries, women reached for ginger because it worked, long before anyone could explain the biology of why. They didn't have the studies. They had the results, repeated so many times across so many generations that the knowledge became certainty. The science that eventually arrived didn't discover ginger's power. It simply confirmed in careful language what the kitchen had known all along. And once again, the familiar pattern. Over the decades, menstrual pain and everyday aches were steadily turned into pharmaceutical categories, with branded products and heavy advertising teaching people to reach for the box on the shelf. There's nothing wrong with those products, and they help many people. But the fresh ginger root never lost its gentle power. It simply lost the marketing war, because you can't patent a root that grows in the ground and sits in the produce aisle for pennies. Bringing ginger back into your life is one of the most pleasant things on this whole list. Simply simmer a few thin slices of fresh ginger in water for 10 minutes or so, strain it, and add a little honey and lemon if you like. It's warming, it's soothing, and it's genuinely delicious. Just a gentle note. If you take blood thinners or have a bleeding condition, keep your ginger to normal food amounts and check with your doctor about anything stronger. And from a tea that soothes the body, we come to that famous little brown bottle, the one I promised you at the very beginning. At number 4 is the clove oil bottle. If you ever experienced this as a child, you never forget it. That sharp, burning warmth that spreads across your mouth, followed by a welcome, blessed numbness. Many of us still remember a grandmother pressing a cotton ball soaked in something against a sore tooth and saying, gently but firmly, "Hold it right there." That was clove oil. She kept it in a small brown bottle in the medicine chest, and when a toothache struck in the middle of the night, before anyone could get to a dentist, it was often the only thing standing between the pain and a few hours of sleep. And this is no old wives' tale. The active compound in clove oil, called eugenol, is a genuine natural topical anesthetic and antibacterial, and this one has serious credentials. Dentists have relied on it since the 19th century, and eugenol is still found today inside certain dental cements used in real dental procedures, including root canals. In fact, a controlled trial once found a clove-based gel to be comparable to a standard pharmaceutical numbing agent for dental pain. The dentist's office and your grandmother's medicine chest were, in this one case, using the very same compound. So why did it fade from common knowledge? Not because it was ever shown to fail. It faded largely because, at a certain point, the official standing of clove oil for dental pain was downgraded, not on the grounds that studies proved it useless, but because no company had funded the specific, expensive trials that modern approval requires. And no company was ever going to spend that kind of money on a dried flower bud that nobody can patent. The science didn't turn against clove oil. The economics simply never lined up behind it. The price gap, as always, is striking. A bottle of clove oil back in 1953 cost around 15 cents. The branded numbing gels at the pharmacy today can run $9, $10, $12, built largely around that same natural compound your grandmother trusted. She never asked anyone's permission to reach for the small brown bottle when a tooth was throbbing at 2 in the morning. She simply used what her mother had taught her to use. Now here I have to be especially careful with you, and please hear me. Clove oil is potent. A tiny amount on a cotton ball, applied gently to the spot, is the traditional way, and it should never be swallowed or used in large amounts, and it's not appropriate for young children. Most importantly, clove oil only quiets the pain of a tooth. It does nothing to fix the underlying problem, and a throbbing tooth is your body's urgent signal to actually see a dentist. Use it, if at all, as a bridge to get you to real care, never as a replacement for it. And from a remedy for sudden pain, we turn to one your grandmother used every single night for the slow aches that build up over a lifetime. At number 3 is turmeric stirred into warm milk. For the joint pain of arthritis and for the deep accumulated inflammation that settles into bodies that have worked hard for decades, your grandmother had a golden nighttime ritual. She'd stir a teaspoon of turmeric into a cup of warm milk, add a pinch of black pepper and a little honey, and sip it slowly before bed. Households across South Asia had been making this exact drink for centuries as a traditional medicine, long before the modern world ever heard of it. Here's a detail that reveals just how much quiet wisdom was folded into that simple cup. Turmeric's active compound, curcumin, has been studied as a natural anti-inflammatory, but on its own, the body absorbs it rather poorly. The secret is that pinch of black pepper, because a compound in pepper called piperine can dramatically boost how much of that curcumin your body actually absorbs, by a remarkable amount. Your grandmother added the pepper without ever knowing the word piperine. She just knew, somehow, that the two belonged together. The tradition had already solved the science, and the modern research has been impressive. One large review that pooled together nearly 30 separate randomized trials found that curcumin helped reduce pain and inflammation across several different types of arthritis. That's a serious body of evidence for something that started as a humble spice stirred into warm milk at bedtime. It's one of the clearest cases on this list of ancient kitchen wisdom being fully vindicated by careful modern study. You already know how the rest of the story goes. Around a decade ago, wellness culture rediscovered this ancient drink, gave it a fashionable new name, and began selling it for many dollars a cup in cafes. The supplement industry, meanwhile, patented particular curcumin formulations and began selling that same active compound in capsule form for $25, $50 a bottle. A jar of plain turmeric at the spice counter, though, still costs very little. Your grandmother never needed a capsule or a cafe. She needed a pot of warm milk and the wisdom handed down to her. If you'd like to bring back the golden cup, it's simple and soothing. Warm your milk of choice, stir in about a teaspoon of turmeric, a good pinch of black pepper, and a little honey to taste. It's a genuinely lovely thing to drink before bed. Just a gentle heads up. Turmeric in normal food amounts is well tolerated by most people. But if you take blood thinners, or you're heading into surgery, or you have gallbladder issues, check with your doctor before using large or concentrated amounts. And from that warm, calming cup, we move to another gentle brew, one your grandmother reached for when the day itself had frayed her nerves. At number 2 is a simple cup of chamomile or peppermint tea. When the day had been long and hard, when nerves were frayed and sleep felt far away, or when an uneasy stomach refused to settle after supper, your grandmother would put the kettle on and steep a cup of gentle herbal tea. Chamomile for calm and for sleep, peppermint for digestion, and for easing a queasy, cramping belly. These weren't fancy or exotic. They were the quiet, dependable comforts of the evening, poured out warm into a favorite cup. And these gentle teas have real, studied effects behind their soothing reputations. Chamomile contains natural compounds that have a mild, calming action, which is why it's been used for generations to ease the mind and coax the body toward restful sleep. Peppermint, meanwhile, contains oils that help relax the muscles of the digestive tract, which is exactly why a cup after a heavy meal can ease that tight, bloated, uncomfortable feeling. Simple herbs, real effects, gently working with the body rather than overriding it. There's something worth pausing on here, too. So much of pain and discomfort is tangled up with stress, tension, and poor sleep. A body that is tense and exhausted feels every ache more sharply, while a body that is calm and well-rested simply copes better with everything. Your grandmother's evening cup of tea wasn't just about the herbs themselves. It was about the whole ritual of pausing, slowing down, and letting the day come to a gentle close. That calm was, in its own quiet way, a genuine medicine. And you can see how easily this too was nudged aside. Over the years, sleep aids and digestive pills arrived in bottles with official names, promising faster, stronger results, and the simple cup of bedtime tea came to seem old-fashioned by comparison. But chamomile and peppermint never stopped being what they always were: gentle, safe, time-tested comforts, available for pennies a cup, with none of the grogginess or side effects that so often come in a bottle. This is one of the easiest and safest remedies to welcome back into your life. A cup of chamomile before bed or peppermint after dinner is a small and lovely kindness to yourself at the end of a day. For most people, these teas are as gentle as can be. Just a note that chamomile comes from the same family as ragweed, so if you have serious plant allergies, be a little cautious. And peppermint can sometimes worsen heartburn in certain people. As always, listen to your own body. And now we arrive at number 1, the remedy at the very heart of them all, the one they could never bottle, patent, or sell. At number 1 is the simple, nightly rub-down, the healing power of human touch. At the end of a long day, when the accumulated aches of a body that had worked hard finally settled in, your grandmother didn't always reach for a bottle at all. She reached out with her own 2 hands. She'd warm a little oil between her palms and work it slowly into aching hands, into a husband's tired lower back, into a child's sore legs after a day of running wild outside. This wasn't a supplement or a remedy with a fancy citation. This was the practice that quietly held all the others together. And here's the astonishing part. The science of touch is deeply, genuinely real. A caring, deliberate touch actually helps interrupt pain signals on their way to the brain. It prompts the body to release its own natural feel-good chemicals, its built-in painkillers, and it lowers the stress hormones that make everything hurt worse. Researchers formally described the mechanism behind this back in the 1960s, giving it a proper scientific name. But your grandmother had been putting it into practice, with her own hands, her entire life, long before anyone wrote it down. Think about what makes this one so different from everything else on the list. No company on earth can manufacture it and put it in a tube. No official category can fully capture it. No patent has ever been filed, or ever could be, on the simple warmth of a caring pair of hands at the end of a hard day. It asks for nothing, it costs nothing, and it carries no side effects but comfort. Of all the remedies your grandmother knew, this is the one that was most completely and most quietly taught out of us. And maybe that's the real heart of this whole story. It was never truly about vinegar or ginger or a small brown bottle, as wonderful as those things are. It was about a kind of knowledge and a kind of care that got passed from hand to hand for generations, until a louder, shinier world slowly convinced us that we needed to buy what we'd always been able to make and do for ourselves. The tools were simple. The love behind them was not. And that combination is what quietly went missing. So here is my gentle encouragement to you. This week, bring one of these back. Offer to rub someone's tired shoulders. Hold a hand a little longer. Let touch be the medicine it has always been. You don't need a supplement aisle for this one, and you never did. You need only a pair of warm hands and the simple willingness to use them for someone you love. That knowledge never truly disappeared. It just went quiet, waiting for someone to remember it. And now let's take a moment to bring everything together. When you step back and look at all 10 of these, a single, striking thread runs through every one of them. Salt, vinegar, warm water, willow bark, Epsom salts, ginger, clove, turmeric, gentle tea, and the warmth of human hands. Each one works through a real mechanism that modern science has since gone back, studied, named, and in several cases refined into a product with a brand name and a price tag. What changed across all those years was never whether these remedies worked. What changed was simply who stood at the register collecting the payment. And notice the most hopeful part of that. These are not ancient, lost secrets locked away in some forgotten book. The people who use them every single week are, many of them, still alive today. Most of these ingredients are sitting on a shelf at your grocery store right now, waiting for a few cents. The knowledge didn't vanish into history. It simply went quiet under the noise of louder, more profitable messages. And the wonderful thing about quiet knowledge is that it can always be remembered again, whenever we choose to. But I want to be completely honest and responsible with you now, because this matters more than anything else I've said. I am not a doctor, and this video is not medical advice. Nothing here is meant to diagnose, treat, or replace a real consultation with a qualified health professional. These are gentle, traditional comforts for everyday aches and minor discomforts, not cures for serious conditions. Please never use them to replace the care you actually need, and never stop or change a medication on your own. If your pain is severe, if it's persistent, if it comes on suddenly, or if it comes with other worrying symptoms, that is your body asking you to see a doctor, and you should listen to it. If you take any medications, or you have an existing health condition, or you're pregnant, talk with your doctor before trying even these gentle remedies, because natural does not automatically mean risk-free for every single person. The wisest approach, and the one your grandmother would surely have wanted for you, is to honor the old knowledge and modern medical care together, hand in hand, rather than choosing one over the other. So this week, pick just one from this list and try it. Brew the ginger tea. Draw the Epsom salt bath. Put the kettle on for a quiet cup of chamomile. Rub a loved one's aching shoulders and watch what a pair of warm hands can do. And when you do, you're not turning your back on modern medicine. You're simply reclaiming a little piece of wisdom that was always meant to be yours. If this video stirred a memory in you, do me a kindness and leave your like, because it truly helps this knowledge reach more people. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And tell me down in the comments what city and state you're watching from, how old you are, and which of these remedies your own family used, because I would truly love to know if your grandmother kept that small brown bottle too. Thank you for spending this time with me. Take good care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.